Welcome to Call Her Daring, and thank you for joining me and women from all walks of life. This episode is brought to you by Bagnet Company. I'm Kelley Daring, and I am kicking off the Call Her Daring podcast with an episode that will give you some insight into who I am and what this podcast is about. I will be talking about some controversial and taboo topics on this podcast, and I want my intentions to be clear from the outset so that you know what you can expect when you listen. First and foremost, this podcast is about women being radically honest about the female experience, and it can be uncomfortable when we are radically honest. We are going to talk about topics that challenge your beliefs. We are going to talk about topics that make you feel exposed. We are going to bring to light the things we think but never dare say for fear of judgment and criticism and shame. Some of these topics may make you feel angry, shocked, or even disgusted. But on the flip side, you may feel relieved, understood, and enlightened. Regardless of which emotions come up for you, my hope is that you will consider this podcast a resource for learning about and understanding the endless facets of the female experience, even when those experiences are not your own, especially when those experiences are not your own. The idea for this podcast actually came out of my TikTok channel when I started a series of videos called Regretful Parents. In that series, I read anonymous messages sent to me from parents who regret having one or more of their children. In the 3 months since I started that series, those videos have amassed over 7 million views and tens of thousands of comments and messages. I do want to note that although the series name is Regretful Parents, I have received very few stories from men, and so most of the stories are from regretful mothers. I had 3 reasons for starting that series. The first reason is that I believe we do a disservice to women, especially young women, by romanticizing and glamorizing motherhood. From the time we are very young girls, we are being told explicitly and implicitly that motherhood is the end game. We are told by media, by society, and especially by women that having children will complete us, that it is the most rewarding, fulfilling thing we do in our life. That may be true for some women, but what is unspoken in our society is the fact that that is not true for all women. What is unspoken is that not only is motherhood not fulfilling for some women, it is entirely unsatisfying and unbearable for some women. And if they could go back and relive their life, they would not have children. Because these women can't voice their emotions, because they can't tell their stories without being absolutely ostracized by society, women often go into pregnancy and motherhood without realizing that they could regret their decision for the rest of their life, because nobody is talking about it. So goal number 1 with the Regretful Parents series is to educate and inform women about the parts of motherhood that society does not allow us to talk about. That leads me to my second goal with this series, and that is to normalize talking about the negative aspects of motherhood. Yes, we may hear mothers talk about some of the challenges they face, but the fear of being criticized and judged and shamed and labeled a bad mom or even a monster prevents mothers from sharing their true feelings, and that needs to end. As long as the topic of regretting parenthood is taboo, women will never be able to make a truly informed decision about whether or not motherhood is right for them. A common response to mothers talking about their regret is to say, well, you made this choice. You chose to be a parent. And that is a really unfair statement, because women are not able to be fully informed about their decision to be a parent because society has intentionally withheld the stories that would contribute to her making an informed decision. So we blame her for not knowing beforehand that she wouldn't enjoy motherhood, even though we withheld the information that would have allowed her to know that. My third goal with the Regretful Parents series is to offer support for regretful parents, especially mothers. Because this is a taboo topic and no one is really talking about it, that means that these regretful mothers feel utterly alone. They have no one they can share their deepest feelings with, and often they feel that there is something wrong with them for the thoughts and feelings they have. What I have discovered with this series is that feelings of parental regret are more common than any of us would expect. And I want these women to know that they are not alone, that there are many people who have the same thoughts and feelings. And there are many people who have not experienced regretful parenting, but who can completely understand those feelings. The fourth point I'm going to make was not an original goal with the Regretful Parent series, but it is a nice bonus. And that is that the Regretful Parent stories are incredibly reaffirming for child-free by choice women. Even when a woman knows with 100% certainty that she does not want children, she is still surrounded by constant reminders and pressure to have kids. Hearing these stories offers a counterbalance to all those reminders and pressure and can give a renewed sense of confidence in those women's decisions to be child-free. So with all that said, you're probably still wondering how I went from a Regretful Parents series on TikTok to starting a podcast. I'm actually an entrepreneur. I own a small business that I started in 2015 called Bagnet Company, and we make products for women, specifically products that make women's lives easier and better. My hero product is one that I invented and patented, and it's called Bagnet. It's a magnetic bag hanger that I created to use in public restrooms where there's no bag hook. Well, several months ago, I was brainstorming new ideas with my creative team, and one of the ideas was starting a podcast. I thought it was a good idea and definitely something I was interested in, but it got pushed to the back burner while we implemented some other creative ideas. A couple of months later, I started the Regretful Parents series on TikTok, and on one of those videos, someone commented, "I now think you should start a podcast." And that's really what moved this podcast idea to the front burner for me. In 2022 and 2023, I experienced a serious bout of burnout. And the root cause was my business and my workload. But if you know about burnout, then you know that it infects all areas of your life, not just the area of the root cause. Part of that burnout came from an extreme desire to make a positive impact in the world and my frustration with not knowing exactly how to do that. I loved making and selling products that make women's lives easier, but I wanted to be more impactful in ways that didn't include selling products. When I started making TikTok videos, I began to get messages and comments from women saying how much they appreciated my videos, how I was impacting their lives, and how I was giving a voice to their unspoken experiences and feelings. I knew I had found my calling and that this was how I wanted to have a positive impact in the world. Now, I do think that the topic of regretting motherhood is extremely important, and it is a conversation that we need to keep having, and one that I will highlight on this podcast. But I also think women will benefit from hearing about a full spectrum of topics, issues, and experiences through a lens of radical honesty. And so that's what I intend to do with this podcast. At its heart, I want this podcast to be a gathering place for women who are open to learning about the issues and experiences that we face throughout our lives, especially those that we are discouraged from talking about. I want to pull back the curtain on all the lies we're sold and all the fairy tales we're told that keep us in a perpetual state of oppression, objectification, and exploitation. I think that one of the greatest things to come out of TikTok is women's storytelling. Through that app, millions of women have told their stories and millions more have watched, listened, and learned from those stories, and it has made us stronger. Those stories have united us. Huge numbers of us have started to see how similar we are, how powerful we are, and how systems of oppression have intentionally kept us alienated from each other because we are so incredibly powerful when we recognize our similarities rather than when we focus on our differences. We are so incredibly powerful when we are talking to each other, when we are not at odds, and when we do not regard each other as the enemy. And so what I hope to do here is to continue the storytelling on a deeper level so that we can continue to learn, inform, unite, and support each other. I am so excited to get this started and go on this journey with women everywhere and from all walks of life. Please join me every week for a new episode of Call Her Daring. And let's continue the powerful tradition of storytelling with the goal of informing and educating us all so that we may step into our truest selves and realize our full potential as powerful women. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Call Her Daring podcast. Please join me every week for a new episode, and let's continue the powerful tradition of storytelling with the goal of informing and educating us all, so that we may step into our truest selves and realize our full potential as powerful women.